I will start it. And we are live.
Okay,
I am going to share just a few logistical notes before Dr. Carpenter jumps in. My name is Joy Jordan. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for the district. The first thing to note is that the session is being recorded and we will post the video on the website tomorrow. Secondly, feedback and comments are welcomed. So there's a couple different ways you can do that. You can put your question in the chat and I will go through those and make sure that Dr. Carpenter is alerted to those. Or if you would prefer to ask it yourself, you can use the raise hand feature, which is down along the bottom, one of the functions along the bottom. Raise your hand and you'll get called on during a break in the conversation. That's it. And now I will pass it over to Dr. Carpenter.
Thanks, Joy. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. It looks at the moment like we have a small enough group that I think we can get everybody's questions answered. So, so I want to make sure that we have plenty of opportunity for people to ask questions, and I definitely welcome you to to sort of unmute, turn your camera on, and we can answer the questions. I think we build this as a conversation with the superintendent on all things Monomoy, and three specific things that I just wanted to address and talk about is proposed changes that the school committee has put forward with changing the regional agreement, sort of talk about those and the why. The second is just to talk about the upcoming year's school budget and what to expect and how that in many ways is linked to the regional agreement conversation. And then the last thing, and this is me being the consummate optimist, just to talk about all things pandemic and operating schools during the pandemic. But I actually do think we're probably on the backside of this, and knock on wood, we're going to get quickly towards some sort of normalcy, so I'm quite optimistic. I can share some of the numbers that we're seeing towards that. So we'll start with the regional agreement that the school district has. So when the school district was formed just over 10 years ago, there was a regional agreement that was created that both towns voted on at their town meetings, and that regional agreement really specifies how our two towns have come together to form the school district and to operate the school district. And regional agreements are things that you're supposed to revisit and look at how they have been working, and is there anything that should get revised in the regional agreement. One of the things that I have raised over the last few years is a concern on some of the way the budget when it comes to the towns, the assessment in the regional agreement, how it impacts our two towns, and it has sort of an unequitable impact, and it's really focused on how the two elementary schools operate, so what we have is we have one elementary school in Chatham and one in Harwich. And the one in Chatham is much smaller than the one in Harwich. So it's roughly about a third of the size of the elementary school in Harwich. And there's an economics principle called Economies of Scale. And basically under the concept of economies of scale, it's very difficult to run a much smaller business, or in this case, a much smaller school, for the same cost per student than it would be to run a much larger elementary school. But the way our regional agreement is laid out, it's blind to how the elementary school costs are broken out between the two towns. So it just says that the cost for running all schools, elementary schools, middle school, and the high school, will be based on the enrollment split in the district, which is roughly about 75% of the students in our district come from Harwich, and roughly 25% of the students in the district come from Chatham. So at the moment, at the elementary level, Harwich taxpayers pay for 3/4 of the cost of operating Chatham Elementary School, and Chatham taxpayers pay for 1/4 of the cost of operating that. And the same thing happens over in Harwich. Chatham taxpayers pay for 1/4 of the cost to operate Harwich Elementary School, and the Harwich taxpayers pay for 3/4 of the cost of operating Harwich Elementary School. But if we really look back over the last several years, if Harwich just paid for its own elementary school costs and Chatham paid for its own elementary school costs, the Harwich taxpayers would actually be saving a significant amount of money, because they have been, for lack of a better term, subsidizing some of the costs of operating Chatham Elementary School just by virtue of the way the regional agreement's laid out. And I'm sure that nobody, when they were creating the regional agreement 10 years ago, wanted this to happen. I don't think they foresaw that the discrepancy in sizes between the two elementary schools would cause something like this. But we've been really good about making sure that we have the same high quality educational program in both buildings. But to do that in both buildings, it costs more at Chatham Elementary School. So the crux behind the changes to the regional agreement are really just to have each elementary school paid for by the town that operates that elementary school, and that would be one fiscal calculation in determining the assessment or the bill that each town pays to operate the school district. So what this means in 2023 or fiscal 2023 dollars is it shifts about $700,000 worth of fiscal burden from Harwich to Chatham, and that's and that would allow us to not have the Harwich taxpayers subsidize what's happening at Chatham, and it also really ensures that we can have a vibrant educational program happening throughout the district in all towns, and it also makes sure that we can keep a really vibrant Chatham Elementary School operating for all of the families in Chatham. So I want to stop there on terms of just the fiscal side of the regional agreement and see if there's anybody that has questions about it, and spend some time to answer those and provide some clarity. So, hearing none, I will jump over to talk about the budget and how it relates to this conversation on the regional agreement. So you can imagine, I think a challenge that we're going to have this year is if we have a warrant article at town meeting that adjusts the financial calculations of the regional agreement, and is going to have a shift in costs from one town to the other. It means at the moment we have been sort of calculating two different budgets. So one is if this changes to the regional agreement passes, and the other is what would we have to do if this doesn't pass. And if the change to the regional agreement doesn't pass, I think it creates a financial hardship, particularly in Harwich right now, which has been for years taking the brunt of this sort of fiscal inequity. So what we have put forward is we've put forward a level services budget based on a presumption that we can get both town meetings to pass this change to the regional agreement. And by level services, what I mean is that we have been operating the school district with really supportive class sizes that are 19 plus or minus 2 at the middle school and high school level, and 18 plus or minus 1 at the at the elementary level. So we've got great supportive class sizes. We'll maintain those class sizes. We'll maintain all of the programming, the guidance supports that that we have in the district, and the great curriculum that we have. My worry is if we don't see the regional agreement pass at both town meetings, that it'll put us in a situation where one of the two towns won't be able to sustain what the budget increase would be without that financial shift. And that puts us in a place where potentially we wouldn't be at a level service for the school district. And because the school district costs would go up, potentially the town of Harwich would have a situation where they wouldn't be at level services for other town services that they offer. So that is my sort of budget in the nutshell. I will sort of pause for a second and just wait to see if people have questions with regard to school district budgets or where we're at.
There are no questions in the chat.
I'm maybe worried that I've lulled everyone to sleep, or everyone is running out to see if their snow blowers are working. Which, as I just saw the weather forecast before we were going into this, and I just had this sudden realization that I'm going to have to dig the snowblower out and try to figure out how to restart it, having not started it for a couple years now. The last sort of quick topic that I wanted to cover before we just sort of jump in to see what sort of questions people have across the board in terms of operating during the pandemic. We have some really, I think, positive signs as of this week in terms of an indication that we are turning the corner when it comes to this major Omicron surge that happened on Cape Cod and throughout the country. So when we started heading into the holiday break at the end of December, we do weekly pool testing. And at the moment in our school district, just under half of the students participate every week in our weekly pool testing. And that happens on Mondays. It's a PCR test that you would have individuals in a classroom who have permission from their parents and would swab themselves. It all goes into the same pool, and we are in the same sampling tube, and we send these off, and the lab that we've been sending them off to has generally been pretty good at getting us results by the following morning. As we were heading into the Christmas break, we were only seeing a handful or maybe just a little bit more of positive pools in any given week. In all of the classrooms, so each classroom would have individuals in those classrooms testing, and we'd see a handful at tops. When we returned from the holiday break, we had about 30 positive pools. So we went. It was a 5-6-fold increase right after the holiday break, and it was such a rapid increase that the state shifted how we did pool testing and went from having pools that had 10 to a dozen individuals in them to only having pools that were 3 individuals at most, 2 or 3 in any given pool. Each of the last 2 weeks, we have seen pools come back with 30 or positive pools in the district. So you can think of all of our classrooms, that 30 of the classrooms have had some individual in those classrooms that was COVID positive. And that has dropped this past week by a third. And I anticipate, given the trends that we're seeing in our nurse's office, that there's a good chance that which has dropped from 30 down to 19 is probably going to be closer to, to 9 or 10 by next week. And probably by the time we start heading into February vacation, there's a good chance we're going to be at a better place than we have been before the holiday break. So that's all good news. And that's actually happening because of a couple of things. First, we have seen a lot of our families have opted for vaccination, and at the moment we have at the elementary level, and keep in mind that at the elementary level, those students were the last to be cleared to get a COVID vaccine. We have between the grade levels between 23% to 41%, depending on the grade level, that have been vaccinated, and at the 41% is actually the first grade at Harwich Elementary School. That's our sort of most vaccinated cohort at the elementary level. Our middle schoolers have sort of a wider spread. They're between 33% at grade 5, going up to 56% at grade 7. And you have to keep in mind that the older middle schoolers may have been vaccine eligible earlier on, and the younger ones are more recently vaccine eligible. And at the high school, which is an 8 through 12 high school, our seniors are at 79% vaccination, and the 8th graders 60%. So and each grade level goes a little bit higher than 60%, up to that 79. So the vaccination has definitely helped. The other thing that I think is also sort of creating protection out there is we had so many people, particularly with this Omicron spike, if they hadn't been vaccinated, many of them caught it, so that there was some natural, we'll call it immunization, that was happening that way. So I think we're at this place where the vast majority of our school population has some antibodies to protect them from COVID, and I do think that that's helping see what's happening in both our schools and locally here, and see this Omicron peak falling off pretty quickly. Last week, the state of Massachusetts announced that they were going to offer school districts an opportunity to go and use a new COVID testing protocol, and it's sort of the state saying you have to sort of give up what we have been using that's been very effective, which has been test and stay, in lieu of this new at-home rapid antigen testing approach. I anticipate that we'll shift that direction after we see the numbers come down to sort of pre-holiday levels, because the test and stay has been really effective for our district, and we've had the vast majority of the parents have been opting to have their children, if they were exposed at school, get tested before going into classes each morning, and it has been really effective at allowing us to keep students in school. What the state's saying is they're saying there's an option, which is to go and shift away from test and stay, and to instead test students if they become symptomatic, and then if you shift away from it, what they're saying is that we would go as a district, send something out to all families saying you can sign up to receive a weekly rapid antigen test. And at the moment, these rapid antigen tests are packaged in 2 test kits per test or per box. So the way it would sort of logistically work out is that every other week students whose families sign up for this would have an at-home rapid antigen kit that they would use, and we would use that in conjunction with pool testing. And ideally, if everybody were doing it, it would be sort of almost a gold standard, pretty much unheard of in a lot of states, where we would offer to all students the ability to have a PCR test through the pool testing on Monday, and we would recommend that families on Thursday do this rapid antigen test, so that students would be able to be tested twice a week, and families would know if a child were COVID positive, and would have the ability to sort of kind of quickly intervene and isolate before others in the household became ill or classmates became ill. And the same thing with staff. So I do anticipate we'll head that direction, but as a district, we just want to make sure that we see the numbers continue to drop down and head into the direction where they have been heading. And I am very much cautiously optimistic that by the time we head into February break, we're going to be at a much better place than we were heading into Christmas. Knock on wood that I hope we come back from February break at that same place. And if last year sort of holds for this year in terms of trends, we should see the numbers continue to drop off and see us be back in to that I think more relaxed place, and that we were in this summer where there was this sort of hope that we were on the hind end of it. And I do really believe that we're kind of on the tail end of this, and that we're hopefully, knock on wood, will be heading into the upcoming school year with a very normal education experience for our staff and our students. So I'll stop there and just open it up for questions on COVID or anything else.
There are currently no questions in the chat.
I'm about to pay Cindy or Charles to go and ask a question.
I was just going to volunteer, Charles.
Dr. Carpenter, I've heard from practitioners in the mental health field recently that they're being overwhelmed right now by requests from parents for mental health services for their children. Seems to be a side effect, a major side effect of COVID. And most of them are not able to take on any additional help, any additional families to provide that help. Is very discouraging to them. I appreciate could you just summarize some of the efforts within the school to perhaps provide more assistance to students and families in need of those supports, either through the budget, what the budget would support, or some of the granting monies that are coming down through the government?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question, Charles. And I think the most important thing that we have been trying to do throughout this pandemic is to do the best that we can to have students have that daily contact with with teachers and caring adults, and then to have everybody back in our schools, so that students also have that really special supportive peer contact with with each other. So so I think one of the key things has been to do everything we can to go and keep our schools open and operating, and I think we've done that. If we look back over the course of this pandemic, I think we've done that better than most districts. And I think that has I think helped on some level. But you're definitely right on, and you touch on a lot of, I think, challenges that we have as a nation, and then challenges that we have locally. I think when it comes to clinical supports, if a family has a loved one, student or adult, who needs some sort of counseling, mental health support out there, there's a lack of providers, and I think countrywide, and there's a lack of providers, even more so regionally here out on the Cape. So so it is a concern that we have. One of the things that we have done in this is we have used the government has funds that are called Esser Funds, where they are emergency relief funds that have been allocated to help school districts rebound from some of the impacts of the pandemic. So one of the things that that we expect to be adding with these funds is some additional social work, counseling supports for students. We've been using some of these funds throughout the pandemic to have additional nursing support, but we also are using some of these funds to help support students who have fallen behind, to help provide math support and reading supports, because we know that some students who, particularly those who elected to be fully remote, may have some gaps that that we need to help them with, to bring them up to speed with their classmates. So so there's I think a lot of factors that play into I think the question you asked, Charles. I don't know if that sort of hits on the different pieces of it.
Thank you. And if I could follow up, what are you reading in the tea leaves or hearing coming down with regard to masking mandates of students? I think that's a particular concern of mine in terms of its emotional and social emotional development.
So the state has extended their mask mandate at least through the end of this month, and I suspect that it will go into next month. I personally would not be surprised if, when we're looking out into the horizon in the spring, if the state and potentially even our schools are at a place where we get to that place where where the rates of infection are down, and that masks become something that that hopefully are something that people opt into, but aren't but there isn't that mask mandate that's happening globally here. There is a school committee policy for for face coverings, and again, when we hit that place, that point, I would imagine that I would be sharing data, that our nurses would be sharing data to to sort of help educate the school committee on, are we at that place in this pandemic to say, okay, it's behind us, because we'll get there. It's just, I think for some, it's not, we're not getting there soon enough. I just want to make sure that we're protecting everybody as best we can. And I'm one of the, and I know that one of the important things for us and biggest challenges when we were immediately coming back from the vacation in the first couple weeks of January, we had about 20% of our students and staff were out in any given day. And I will give our teachers a lot of credit for flexing as and our teaching assistants and everything to to flex to go help us keep the buildings open, because it was, I think it was, there were a couple of weeks right at the beginning of the calendar year where it was all hands on deck to try to keep operations happening. And you weren't seeing it just in schools, you were seeing it in grocery stores, and you're still seeing some of the ripple effect where a Cumberland Farms might have a sign on the door saying, we're closing at 9, because usually they had the staffing to be open till late at night. And I think we're starting to see, I think both the schools and our communities emerging from that.
While we're giving folks time to come up with the questions they want to ask, I just wanted to go back to Charles' first question and make sure everybody knew about the resource that is Sheila House. She is the youth counselor for the town of Harwich. So any families in Harwich can reach out to her for support with mental health issues and all of those sorts of things. And she can see some people directly. And if she's not able to, she can help make referrals out to other organizations or providers. But it's a great resource for the families in Harwich. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that while we're waiting for more questions.
And we do have, we have a really great counseling team, throughout the district in each building, and all one needs to do is reach out to, your child's guidance counselor or your child's principal, and they can help push supports, to your child as best we can, because everyone, all the children's social emotional health is every bit as important as their reading, writing, and arithmetic. Charles, you're welcome to ask as many questions as you'd like.
Okay, I just a follow-up comment. I just wanted to comment to you and others listening in. Credit and kudos to the entire teaching staff and staff of the district right from the beginning of COVID, in terms of keeping our schools and in our communities open. And the flexibility that you talked about, I think this has just been remarkable, and on a nationwide basis and even across the state, where we see teachers groups as stumbling blocks to that initiative over the history of it. That has been just the opposite. I've been amazed, tremendously pleased as a resident in the community to see the ability you've had to keep things going and open because of the cooperation and teamwork you've had from the staff, the entire staff of the district. So kudos to them.
Yeah, I think it was never more evident than in those first couple weeks of January, where when I'm saying that everybody was flexing, it was really, I think really special, and I couldn't be more proud of our staff for making sure, despite how many people had come down with this last wave that went through, how we were able to still stay open and provide great services for our students.
Scott, Cindy has her hand raised. Cindy Geshe.
Hey, Cindy.
Hi, I have a question. Are we still doing any contract work with Gosnell? I know that we were for a while.
We do. So again, I think if families reach out to a guidance counselor in their child's building, we can connect them with Gosnold if there's availability there. Go ahead, Charles.
A little different topic. I recently had great pleasure and privilege to see the district's elementary principals present about the new ELA program, new reading program that has been implemented in the district. It looks absolutely phenomenal, tremendously exciting, and getting some very short-term quick results. At the same time, as I was looking at the current performance scores of the kiddos in the elementary grades in the area of reading, I raised concerns on my part. And I, for me, as a former elementary principal, that's the key to the entire academic program of the entire school career of a youngster. I just want to be sure that the district and the budgets we're moving forward is feeling comfortable that that program alone, without further supports, are going to be able to catch up, particularly those kids in the upper elementary grades that are behind grade level or significantly behind grade level. So that is just weighing heavily on my mind. Just thought I'd bring that question up.
So, so from a budget, standpoint, we are putting in the resources to continue the new reading program at the elementary levels. It's the American Reading Company program, and I was actually in classrooms at Harwich Elementary today, watching teachers implement this, and was spent some time before and after going into the classrooms with the principal to sort of look at the data. So we were looking at each teacher's data before we went into the classroom, and it was really impressive. But it's really an opportunity for teachers to, in real time, see the needs of their children. And I think one of the things that differentiates how we're doing reading at the elementary level from when I and probably you were in school. When we were in school, the entire classroom was reading the same text, and some may have seen that text as too easy. Some may have seen that text as too hard. Many of our elementary classrooms will have 8 different reading groups, reading 8. Each of them reading a different book that's at their particular level. So it's a curriculum that meets the child at the level that they're at, and helps elevate them from that spot, so that you're seeing the products that the students are producing. I was in I think I was in a first grade classroom, seeing, no, sorry, it was a kindergarten classroom, and I was seeing, a student had written about fish, and I was just so impressed. They had drawn the pictures of the fish, but they're writing about fish, and fish have gills so that they can live in water, which for a kindergartner was a pretty complex sentence to go write out. Now, was the spelling perfect? No, but they're reading. They're not only reading about fish, or reading. They're not only reading at a level that's appropriate for for that individual child, but the books that they're reading all are tied to some thematic subject. So they're focusing on animals in one classroom, and I go in another classroom. It was a classroom, I think it was a third grade classroom, that was doing glossaries for this little book that they had written, where they have highlighted the main terms that should be, that you would want to know, so you could understand their what they've written about the weather. And so you have these a lot of them are science concepts that those themes are on. But it was amazing to really see, I think, how much progress this program has provided for students, and students who started the year behind where ideally they should be at any particular grade, to see how many of them have been elevated using this program in just just a little bit less than half a year of using the program. Been really impressive. And I thought the presentation that the two elementary principals gave with Katie Clooney and Cindy Makehomer was just really impressive at the last school committee meeting.
Agree with it, with everything. And my biggest concern was if I were a parent of a third or fourth grader right now reading in the emergency category or in the below, will the district through this program alone be able to get my child up to grade level before they start middle school, where they've got to really use that tool for the rest of their learning. And so it's a great program. It's making great progress. In the short term, is it going to be enough progress for those kids that are getting on the cusp of moving out of elementary toward middle school?
Yeah, my looking at the data, I actually think yes, that the way this has been tracking, by the end of this year, this program will have made some great closed gaps that COVID may have brought about when it comes to reading, and then you have the younger kids, the cohort that has the I think highest number of students that are reading at grade level and above at the moment are our kindergartners. Okay, and which is sort of like that sign of how good this program could be in the long haul. Where the kindergartners weren't necessarily impacted by losses. It's they came in using this program and are seeing just incredible growth. Hey, Mark.
And I think Mark would like to chime in on this as well.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add, so for folks in the room, Mark Smith, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment for the district. So Charles, just to add on to a couple of things that Scott mentioned, so another part that you didn't see in the presentation that Principal Oldak and Principal Kelly gave the other day, is because it wasn't the focus of their presentation, is that we additionally, both schools also have, on top of working out, and I know you know this language, Charles, but I'm just going to, for those in the room that might not know this language, this is a tier 1 program. And for everybody else in the room, that means like instruction that every student gets. That's our core ELA curriculum. That's what every student gets. But both schools also have really strong intervention systems already set up. So what do we do for students that are not meeting with success? And so both schools already had these strong structures in place. So we already have mechanisms in both schools for working with students that were struggling already. So this program is helping us really have this really strong foundation in place to help accentuate what were already strong intervention structures in place. So those safety nets were already there. It gives us this strong base. And like a third layer is, we're seeing, or third, I guess, or separately, the pandemic is something like that we've never seen before. And it may take, for some students, it may take a couple of years for us to get them completely caught up. And we recognize that as a district. So that is definitely on our radar as well, Charles, is that there's some students that, it's going to take us a couple of years of work that we're going to have to stay focused on. And, if you can look at research like from Katrina as an example, that it took a couple of years of work to get some students caught back up after Katrina, but it is the research, from that experience shows that it is possible. It just does take focused work, and I know we have the right team here to do that work.
Thank you. All very helpful responses. Very, very good. Thank you.
Let's see, Sharon, did you have a question?
I didn't. My hand somehow got up. That's all. But thank
Okay.
you. I'm interested in all this.
Are there any other questions? Charles?
One more comment, and I never identified myself to others in the room. Charles Gruska, and I'm a Harwich resident, a retired educator and elementary school principal, and I have two grandchildren attending Monomoy, both at the high school level and on school choice. And just a comment regarding the proposed amendments and in relation to the budget. I just want to share for others in the room and others listening. I had just been and you've heard this before, Dr. Carpenter and members of the school committee, just so impressed with what I have observed in the schools. And I've had an opportunity to work in the schools on a voluntary basis on a number of committees, and it brought me during the school day into the building. And when I moved here, I was blown away. I can't say better words than blown away by what the school system is providing its students in terms of class sizes, programs, materials, up-to-date materials, well-maintained buildings. I didn't know that existed in many, if any, places anywhere else. And so I've been very concerned about maintaining the strongest school budget possible to do what the goal is that you're setting for next year's budget, and have set right along with the school committee to keep maintaining what we have. And as a resident of Harwich, I'm also very conscious of the financial situation in Harwich and the difficulties the town has to both maintain its assessment for the schools and maintain all the other departments in town. And this afternoon, I found out that we were 5 police officers short in Harwich. And my concern is that the school budget is going to be ceilinged out by the ability of Harwich to afford it. And that's not going to only affect Harwich kids, but it's going to affect all the Chatham kids in the system as well. And the amendments that are being proposed are actually asking for town of Chatham to pay greater assessment, for the taxpayers of Chatham to pay a greater assessment towards the schools to keep them operating and maintain the level of quality to help Harwich in that regard. And that's going to be a hard or difficult ask. But I just want people to know that I know firsthand as a resident that people want all of their services. If they want quality education, the difficulty right now is on Harwich to maintain assessments. And if they have to reduce their assessment, Chatham is going to be forced to reduce its assessment as well, because that's the way the regional agreement works. So it's more of a reduction than just helping Harwich get to its point. It's going to actually bring Chatham lower, and that's going to impact, and then that's not a matter of just impacting the education of kids in the elementary schools, whether Harwich or Chatham Elementary School, because it's the middle school and the high school that have students from both towns. So the goal for people interested in the same interests as that I have of maintaining what we have in the district, it is important for people to understand that it's an important amendment that's coming before the voters at the town meetings this year, and that it's not just merely a matter of Harwich asking to renege on an agreement or something, or looking for an easier path. I know firsthand that it's not, oh, we just want to pay less. We want to be able to maintain all the quality services in our town. So just an observation. I shared to the Harwich Board of Selectmen, Dr. Carpenter, you were there. My taxes went up $800 this year with a school budget that increased less than 1%, with a Harwich assessment that increased just over 2%. I experienced a 20% increase in my property taxes to maintain all of the needs of the town at this point. That's the reality. Many people would not be in my category to continue to be able to afford that and pay their taxes and be forced to look for reductions. So I just want to make those observations and comments. I've made them in other forums. I've made them in editorials of the paper, and for the benefit of especially those in Chatham listening in, I just wanted those comments to be heard from someone who has grandchildren in the school and someone who appreciates the importance of quality education, wants to see it continue. Thank you.
Do we have anybody else in the chat, Joy?
There are no questions in the chat.
All right, so I guess we'll wrap things up for this evening. I want to thank everybody for coming, and then just sort of put the friendly reminder out. I'm sure I'll be emailing people on Friday that if we do get this 12+ inch snowstorm that this evening's news seemed to indicate, we have to keep in mind, and somewhat along the theme that Charles was bringing up, we're all in this together, and this is a time where we need to really make sure that our neighbors are okay too. And so I think it's a great opportunity to kind of let your own children know that check in with the retirees living next door, and see what they need, and maybe they need a little help shoveling. It's going to take a lot. So time for me to go and dig out the snowblower and figure out how to go and start it once again. All right. Have a great evening, everyone.
Scott, the latest prediction is 2 to 3 feet.
No, great. All right. Have a great evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.